Hello and welcome to episode 267 of my podcast all about knitting and crochet and my yarn shop here in Wiesbaden, Germany. I'm Kiko and today is March 10th, 2025. Today I'm wearing two very bright and colorful pieces and the little scarf or shawlette that I'm wearing. The pattern is called Baltic Summer and it's by Martina Behm, who's one of, I think, most famous German knitwear designers there are. I really like her designs. She's the queen of the asymmetrical little triangular shawls. And the first pattern that I think that was famous was the Hitchhiker, which is a small triangle which is asymmetric and it has these sort of zigzags at the lower edge, I think. Is it just one edge or two edges? I think it's just one edge where you have those zigzags, and they are exactly 42 in her sample. That's why she called it the Hitchhiker, from the Hitchhiker's Guide Through the Galaxy and so on and so forth. But anyway, this is called Baltic Summer, and it has those zigzags on all three edges of the shawl, which is quite funny. And it plays with this zigzag pattern, which is really nice if you have a self-striping yarn so that the zigzags are very obvious. But then you also work with increases and decreases. So you start with the little edge and you can see this is the way that this is knit. And then on this side, you keep casting off stitches. So you get those big like spikes. And then on this side, you increase stitches. And because of the zigzags, you get these other spikes. And then the third edge, what's the third edge? Oh, that one. This is just the cast off edge. And those zigzags just happen because of the pattern, because of the increases and decreases you do. But this is a really fun pattern. Back then I knitted out of one ball of Opal Abo yarn, subscription yarn. So I only had 100 grams of that. And I keep saying that the Abo yarn that we get in the subscription, sometimes the colorway is repeated in a normal series. And this colorway was repeated in a 6-ply sock yarn. So I think it's that one. It's these colors. They look a bit different, but it's actually these colors in a 6-ply yarn. So that's quite interesting. And that was a colorway that you could buy in a shop or in their online shop, whereas the subscription colorways, you just get what you get and you can't order them afterwards. So that's the little shawlette I'm wearing, and the vest that I'm wearing is knit out of a very bulky yarn. It was called Caldo by Lana Grossa, I think. It's a pure wool, which was knit with a really big needle. And I saw a picture of this vest in a magazine. I think it was an American magazine. I think it was now called Designer Knitting, and back then it was called I think Vogue Knitting. I don't know. Anyway, when I knit this piece, I didn't have the pattern. I bought it later, but I just knit this from the picture. I changed a few things, but basically all this is a rectangle with 2 holes, and I just put this little clip here to hold it close, and but you can wear it open like this, or you could put the clips in a different spot and have a different look. But basically, if I turn around and hold it up, you will see it's just a rectangle with 2 holes. I hope you can see it now. And the funny thing about this rectangle is that 1/3 is knit in stockinette stitch from this side. Then the middle is reverse stockinette or stockinette from this side. And then the third part again is knit in stockinette from this side. So what happens is I wear the vest so that the middle part with the stockinette is visible. And then on the back there is a big cable. And in the original pattern, they actually cabled half the stitches over the other half of the stitches. And I felt that was just too big and too weird. So I think I did, I divided the stitches by 3, and then I think I crossed the first 2/3 and then the other 2/3, if that makes sense. Yeah, so that's the only pattern on the back. Otherwise, this is just stockinette or reverse stockinette. And then because the upper and lower half are reverse stockinette on the outside, once you fold this third down as your collar, big collar or whatever, then again the stockinette side shows. And I really liked that. I thought that was a clever idea of doing something like this. Of course, I can wear it upside down. I can't really tell which is supposed to be up or down, and I'll just wear it any way it comes. I started off with, I think, 2 rows of garter stitch, and I crocheted around the upper and lower edge to make sure it doesn't roll too much. But because it's such a heavy yarn, I don't think it would have rolled a lot. But but with the crocheting, just a 1 row of, or maybe 2 rows of single crochets. And the last row I crocheted in the wrong direction. Not quite sure what it's called in English, but it gives this nice edge. I don't enjoy crocheting that pattern a lot, but it really looks nice on an edge. So I will do it every now and then. Yeah, I think that's everything I can say about this vest. I kept thinking I might do this style of garment again, maybe with a different pattern in the different sections, maybe with a thinner yarn, but so far I never got around to doing that. And I think it's a bit crazy to wear those two together, but because of the yellow and the pink that are in both the projects, I thought I could get away with wearing them together. And I find it hard to find something to go with, especially for this little shawl. I think, yeah, I usually only wear it with black or gray because it has so many crazy colors. I've been planning to knit a pink pullover for ages. And if I had that, I could probably wear this shawlette with a pink pullover. And it has those spiky things on all the edges, so it's sometimes funny when you try and wear it and style it somehow. Yep, I think that should do. Okay, that's it for what I'm wearing today. Then on to finished objects. I have 3 finished objects and 1 or 2 new cast-ons, depending on how you define new cast-on. But let's say it's 2 new projects and 3 finished ones. And one of the finished objects is actually one of the one that I started last week. But anyway, I'll start with the oldest and biggest. Again, the oldest is actually the biggest project, and that's my memory blanket. I called it All My Memories blanket, something like that. So the first time I knit the pattern, which is called Coziest Memories blanket, I think. The first time I knit the pattern, I was trying to use up my leftover yarn. So I would repeat the same color. I would use the same color for several squares. I wouldn't put them next to each other so that the blanket would still look very colorful. But all I used were the leftover yarns, and I used them as often as I wanted. Now with the new blanket, I had decided to always do the first 2 rows in black so that I would get a small black frame around all the squares. And I also decided that for every project I knit, I would put 1 square in the blanket. So most of the colors are only in the blanket once. And the only time I repeated a colorway is when I used the same color for several projects. So I started with this beautiful turquoise blue color. And you can see I started with 2 rows of black. Then I knit the first square. And then all the other squares are knit onto the first one. And I think with the first blanket, it was all opal yarn. But with this one, because I do knit with other sock yarn every now and then, I also put other like companies in the blanket. And this, for example, I'm pretty sure was Woldackel hand-dyed yarn, but the rest so far looks like opal sock yarn. And every square that's in here represents a project that I knit. I can't always remember the projects I made off the top of my head, but I could check my Ravelry page and I could probably find all of the project. This is another hand-dyed sock yarn, which is not opal. This is one of their Black Dragon colorways, so that's a beautiful one. I do have single color squares in here as well. This was one of the, I think, I'm not quite sure whether it's hand dyed or printed, but this was one of the extra skeins that we get with the opal subscription, the abo, and I knit those two together in a cowl. That was like 2-color brioche pattern, and I think I test knit the pattern or something like that. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about each and every one of the squares, but that's how the whole thing started. I showed you the beginning of the blanket, and it's 10 squares wide and it's 16 squares long. And I think the last time I showed it to you, I'd already finished all the squares. So these were the last two that I put in. This is a pair of socks for my friend, and this is a pair of socks for her husband. And yeah, and I think I talked about most of the squares. And all I had to do was pick up stitches on this upper edge to add the black line, and also the last 6 squares on this side, I had to pick up stitches. And all I did is I picked up stitches, I knit 1 row, and then I cast them off again. So that's all I did. But now the whole blanket has a tiny black frame, and all the squares are divided by a tiny black line. I know that some people, for example, Sarah Shira, I think she's working on a blanket where she has, I think she also uses black to divide the little, the colors, but I think she knits at least 6 rows of black. So she has a bit of she has a bigger border around all her colorful bits, but I'm quite happy with this tiny black line dividing all the colors. And now I have a beautiful blanket that reminds me of many of my projects. And I knit on this blanket for a really long time. Oh, by the way, those 2 colors, that was a pair of Sock Madness socks that I knit a few years ago. And I knit 1 sock in the yellow and 1 sock in the orange. With the Sock Madness, usually it's allowed to use different colors for the second sock. And I thought it was a really fun pair to have those 2 colors. And I used a solid color because it had some intricate, I think it was a cable pattern with, how do you call the stitches that you knit through the back loop? Twisted stitches. So it's twisted stitches cables, I think. Yeah, anyway, really happy with this blanket. It's a nice size for me to cuddle under on the sofa. So my sofa at home is the place where this blanket is supposed to live. And I'm really happy that I finished it. And I'm so looking forward to starting the next blanket. And I feel that finishing a blanket gives you the right to start a new one. And I've had a blanket planned with a tin can knits pattern knit out of pure alpaca yarn for ages. So I will definitely start that as soon as possible. So that was that. Then the next finished object, I already showed you a bit of the yarn because it's the socks for my friend. So I'd already put a square into the blanket before I finished the socks, but now I actually did finish them. I used a colorway from Opal Rainforest series. The colors are, the stripes are at different places. I know my friend's not too keen on that, but I don't think she will mind. And the most interesting aspect about these socks is that I knit most of the socks in the 4-ply sock yarn, but I did both heels and both toes in the 6-ply sock yarn, but in the same colorway. So Opal always produces the rainforest colors both in 6-ply and 4-ply. So the heels and the toes are all different because I just knit from the skein, from the ball of yarn the way it came. This bit is funny because this color bit is repeated. Here it's always at a different spot of the colorway. But I think they look really nice, and I'm pretty sure my friend is going to be happy with her new pair of socks. And then The last finished object is actually my Sock Madness Round 1 socks, but for once I'm going to do things a little differently than usual. Usually I always show you my finished objects first and then go on to the works in progress. But today I'm going to change it around a little bit because when I got the pattern dropped last Tuesday morning, our time, and it called for 2 colors. So I went to work where I have most of my yarn and looked for yarn that I wanted to use. And with my leftover yarns, I didn't really find anything that I thought would work well with this pattern. But I picked one solid color that I had already worked with. So this was a partial ball of yarn. But then I looked through the other yarn that I have in my shop and I picked out this colorway from the merino yarn. So this is a new series that Opal came out with, I think, at the end of last year. Or was it beginning of this year? Not quite sure. Anyway, they came out with 6 different colorways made out of merino yarn. And this is actually a lot softer than the yarn that they usually make, even though I can wear any of their yarn next to skin. I'm absolutely fine with that. But this is like so much softer than this. And I thought that these 2 colors have a nice contrast. They do look a little lighter on camera right now. But yeah, so that's what I decided. And the pattern is called Day and Night. So they would be perfect with black and white, something like that. But then black is always a bit difficult to see for the moderators who have to check our socks, the pictures of our socks, whether we did everything correctly or not. But anyway, I started knitting. So you cast on with color 1 and then you, this is a slip stitch pattern. So you only ever work with 1 color at a time. And then you do the ribbing and then you go into the pattern and it has little tiny cables that you can sort of see here. And it's a really nice pattern. So you do half the sock with the 1 color as the main color and then the other half has the other color as the main color. So you always have to pay attention which stitches to slip and which to knit. But it's not too difficult. And I read through the pattern. I followed the questions thread on Ravelry to make sure I catch all the spots that may be unclear. And for some reason, the number 6 stuck in my head. So I thought it was 6 pattern repeats until you do the increases. It's a heel with increases. Then you do the heel turn. And then I did 6 pattern repeats for the foot. And then I was a bit surprised because with 6 pattern repeats, this would have been too small even for me. So I added 2 more pattern repeats thinking the sock should at least fit me, even if it doesn't fit anybody else. But that was the moment that I actually checked the pattern. And see and behold, I had the wrong number in my head. It's supposed to be 9 pattern repeats. So for the foot, it wouldn't have been a problem because I'd already done 8 pattern repeats. I could have added 1 more. It would have been 9. It would have been fine. But I was missing 3 pattern repeats in this section. So I could have ripped it all back until here and then added 3 pattern repeats and then repeat the whole thing. Theoretically, I could have cut it open and split it apart, added 3 pattern repeats and then sewn it together. But with a slip stitch pattern with cables, there was no way I was going to do that. But you know me, I don't like ripping back. So instead of doing anything with this sock, I just put it aside and I picked the next yarn. And I just realized I didn't bring the yarn, but that's okay. So from this first sock, I knew that if I did 9 pattern repeats in the foot, it would be perfect for me. Because with the 8 pattern repeats, I was just trying to be very quick. It might have been a bit small, but I knew 9 pattern repeats would be perfect for me. So for the second version of these socks, I decided to pick a yarn that I like and make them for me. And the first... So this sock I will give away to a friend who's knitting a cardigan out of this color. So then she can have socks that match her cardigan. But for the second version, I wanted the socks to be for me. So I went through my my private stash, not the yarn shop stash. And I found this colorway, which was a It was an Opal Abo. I looked at my Abo yarn, my subscription yarn first, but I couldn't find anything that I thought would work with this pattern. So I went through the other stash, and this was a beauty, it was from the Beauty series. So the Beauty series by Opal, it has some vitamin E and some other stuff in the yarn so that it is softer than the normal Opal sock yarn. It's not quite as soft as the merino yarn, but still it's quite soft, but it's also very beautiful. So I like the pink and purple and a bit of orange in there. I really like the color. And also I was trying to find a colorway that I could combine with a light main color or a light solid color, because I usually tend use the dark contrast color. So I love to have black or dark blue or dark gray as the contrast color. Sometimes with the first sock it was dark purple. I sometimes use dark green. So I wanted to try and use a light contrast color. So I had a partial ball of yarn in this light gray, which sometimes has a sort of a purplish tinge to it. And I thought those two colors looked together really nicely. And I started over and I finished the socks yesterday. So if you look at them like this, you see one color. If you look at them like this, you see the other color. And then like this, you can see it's two color socks. But the most interesting way to look at them is probably the way you wear them, is to look at the top of the sock, and then you have this night and day feeling of seeing both colors. And yeah, so this is what they look like. The back looks like this. There's no pattern on the sole of the sock. I almost mixed that up and I almost put in cables at the sole, and I know it happened to some other people. You can see this nice heel tone that has two colors, where you use both the colors. Yeah, and I was really happy to finish the socks, and I got a spot for the for round 2, and I will be participating in the competition for round 2. Now, that's all the finished objects I have. I've already shown you the sock I'm working on for the Sock Madness. And that's all the socks for now. And I'm going into garments now. And I'll start with my pullover that I'm knitting out of the Advent calendar. 20 gram minis that I got as an Advent calendar last year. And I already shown you the sleeve and the shoulder. And I am now knitting on the second front or back. And I'm not quite sure that my yarn is going to be enough. So when I started the first back or front, I was pretty sure I'd picked the blue ball and the colorful ball that was slightly bigger than the other ones, because none of the balls are exactly 20 grams. So they're sometimes 20.3 or maybe 20.8. And I thought I'd use the bigger ones, but now I'm really not quite sure, because with the blue, with the turquoise, I already knit one row more with this first one than the second one. And now with the colorful ball, I hoped to knit a row more than in the first part so that it would be the same width, but this is all I have left. And I'm not sure this is going to be enough to do. I think I have to knit at least another 8 rows, 7 or 8. I counted them, but I forgot the number. And I'm not sure it's going to be enough. So right now I'm thinking, if it's not enough, it's not really a big problem, because before I split it for the front and back, I used this colorway to just get the shoulder to be a bit longer. And at first I thought I'd used 10 grams to knit this, but this is only 5 grams. So what I did is I knit 10 rows because I wanted the shoulder to be a bit wider. So I have more than 10 grams left of this ball. So if this isn't enough, I'm going to use this color to finish this front or back. And then I'm going to use the rest of the color to knit another 10 rows. And then I knit the next color, which is supposed to be the same width as this. And then I will have to see if I get the same number of rows from my ball of yarn. And if not, I can see whether the next ball will yield a bit more, or maybe I'll have to add another color at some point. I don't know yet. So with the first part, I always knit the yarn, as much of the yarn as I had or as I wanted. And now with the second part, I'll just have to make sure it's the same size as the first one. And now I've, especially with my German channel, I've had several questions about the pattern and how to get it and how it works. So I know I talked about this before, so I'm sorry I'm repeating myself, but because I had so many questions, I wanted to remind you. The pattern is from this book, and because I don't read Japanese, I can't tell you what the title of the book is. It's written by Martina Umemura. And if you are in Japan or if you have access to Japanese books, Martina Umemura has written 2 books with opal yarn, and this is one of them. And probably you can find it from the cover. And the pullover in the book looks like this. And it is a very simple pattern. So if I tell you how it's done, I don't think I'm giving away too many secrets because all the pieces are very straight. I haven't cast on the exact number that's in the book because I thought the sleeve would be too wide for me. So I found my own number. I did a knit 3 purl 1 pattern. I knit the sleeve length that I wanted. Then I cast on the number of stitches for the front and back that I wanted for myself. Actually, I cast on more stitches than I wanted. Originally, I wanted the pullover to be a bit shorter, but my gauge swatch was off because I used the sleeve as a gauge swatch, which was stupid because this is not stockinette. And after the sleeve, I changed to stockinette stitch. The last couple of stitches on the bottom of the pullover, I am knitting the stitches every other wrong side row. And then I knit the shoulder as far as I wanted. Now I'm knitting the neckline as far as I want. And then I just repeat the whole process, as I said, to make sure the second half has the same size as the first half. And that's really it. So if you want to have a pullover like this, I think you can make it up by yourself. Now, the other garment I am knitting at the moment is the vest from the pattern Vest Friends by Tin Can Knits, out of another opal abo yarn, subscription yarn. Beautiful color. I got a second one. Usually you only have 1 ball per color, but I did a swap with somebody, and so I have 2 balls of that now. That should be sufficient for me and my size to knit a vest. And I have finished the straight part of the upper back. So it's actually this way round. So this is going to be the bit where I knit stitches for the fronts, to knit to the front. And this is the back. And I will now have to do a few increases so I get the armhole. And then once I finish that bit, I will put those stitches on hold. I will knit the 2 fronts down to the same length. And then I can knit all the stitches and knit the front and back together for the rest of the vest. Really happy with how this looks, and I'm really looking forward to knitting more on that and finally starting one of the fronts. And then I did a little bit of crochet last week. I crocheted the other squares out of another opal subscription ball of yarn. So that was the big one I did, and I actually got 5 squares out of that ball of yarn. They all look different. I really like it, and it's quite interesting. So with this one, for example, it starts with this blue-white, and then the blue-white comes again. It reappeared here. So I knew that I was crocheting a little more than 1 color repeat for every square. So the color I started with always came back in the 8th round, and then I always did 9 rounds. So this color is here, and this is why every square started with a different color, and they all look different even though I used the same ball of yarn. I really like that. That was the big one. And I found another square at home that I meant to bring, doesn't matter. So I think I'm only missing 2 squares now, and I'm so looking forward to putting everything together. And then I might finish another blanket fairly soon. And that brings me to the knit-alongs, and I do keep getting questions about the knit-alongs, and they are really not very complicated on my channel. You don't have to sign up. You don't really have to do anything except knit the same pattern that I'm knitting. And then if you want to, you can share your pictures in the Ravelry group for Kikos Strickschule. And for the for the February sock, I already have a discussion thread. For the March one, I still haven't. I'll try and do it today. And that's all there is to it. And also this year I decided to film a tutorial video for each of those socks. And for the February socks, where we knit socks with the yarn held double with seat stitch. If you want to do it that way, you can. And I used a mohair yarn held double with sock yarn. You can do that, but you can just use a single thread of yarn and knit seat stitch, or you can use yarn held double and knit a different pattern, whatever you like. Just enjoy knitting socks, and if you want, share some pictures. So I continue knitting on my comfortable socks a little bit. I've almost got to the point where I can start knitting stockinette on half the stitches in preparation for the heel, but I didn't quite make it. So I did a lot of sock madness knitting last week. So that's that. And then for the March socks, the tutorial video is not out yet on the English channel because I couldn't find the time to translate it into English. I have done the translation now, and we are going to release the video on Thursday. So on Thursday, you can find the tutorial video for socks knit with the Estonian spiral pattern. It's a funny name, but it's a nice and simple pattern. I'm using yet another Abo yarn, another subscription colorway. And I found out that this colorway is going to come back in a series sometime this year. So if you like this colorway, you will be able to buy it at some point this year. I'll let you know when it comes out. And I say in the tutorial video for these socks that because it's a spiral pattern, it sort of gets a bit smaller, and it might be good to cast on a few more stitches than you need. So I usually knit my socks with 60 stitches, and I started these socks with 66 stitches. So each pattern repeat is 6 stitches. And I'm using bigger needles than usual. So these are 3mm needles, and my plan is to knit half the leg on the 3mm needle, then change to 2.75 for the other half of the leg. And then before I start the heel and the foot, I will decrease 6 stitches and then knit the rest of the sock on 60 stitches and a 2.75mm needle, which is what I usually do for my socks. And I know that fits me really well. So I haven't gone through the whole color repeat yet. So I haven't had any yellow yet. But what you can already see is that the stripes that are in the self-striping yarn, they get broken up through this spiral pattern. And there are yarn overs in the pattern, so there are some small holes in there, but you can't really see them very well. You see them when you pull it apart, but if you have it relaxed, you only see those stitches that slant sideways because of the many decreases and increases you do. And then the color stripes get broken up, and you get those, sometimes they look like squares, and sometimes they just look like short stripes. Difficult to explain. But I think it looks nice, and it's, as I said, really easy to knit. And you can use the pattern for anything that you knit in the round. Doesn't have to be socks, could be leg warmers, arm warmers, hats, cowls, whatever. Even a pullover. That'd be fun. Yeah. Anyway, so that's everything I knit and crocheted last week, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!